This is, well, we've promised this all show. We haven't gotten around to this yet. So it's time to do it. NFL Power Rankings. 107.5 The Bone. What? Did you hear that? It sounds like it was a local radio station there for a second. Power rankings in the National Football League, which have remained, I would say, top 5 as consistent as it gets here in the early going. Maybe a team moves up a spot or not, but the top 5 teams, I can't imagine that anybody doesn't have some version of Niners, Chiefs, Eagles, Dolphins, and Cowboys, and maybe the Bills as a top 6.
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is it even a top 6?
It's a top 6. I think those are now people like
No, I think it's a top 5.
Okay.
I think it's a top 5. I think you could make some arguments.
Okay. Well, I have it Niners 1. That remains the same from last week. I have Chiefs 2. That remains the same. I did put the Eagles up a notch. I put the Dolphins up a notch. The Cowboys dropped 2 because of that loss to Arizona, but they're still top 5. Then I do have the Bills, who inhabited the number 6 position last week. They inhabit that again. And here's then, I think at this point is where it sort of then starts to stray from person to person. I have the Browns in my top 10 for the first time. That defense is too good to ignore.
Yep, too good.
Too good to ignore. I've got the Browns moving in for the first time. They're at 7. I dropped the Ravens down to 8. I still think they're a top 10 football team. And where it gets even dicier, Kelly, I think is when you go 9-10. I had the Seahawks as my 10th ranked team last week. I have them at 9. I know there's a lot of people who are like, Seahawks? Yeah, because I don't know that there are that many other candidates. And I've got the Chargers back in at number 10 because ultimately when I look at the NFL, I still think the Chargers, for all of their flaws, and boy, oh boy, do we know that they've got flaws, I still think they're really good. They just can't get it together. If they could ever get it together from a coaching standpoint, I mean, talent-wise, are you kidding me? I've got them at 10. Here's who I don't have in there. I don't have the Bengals in there. Haven't had them all year.
Nope, you have not.
Nope. What you got?
I think the other thing that's important to lay out, because me and you always have done this the same way. When we used to do this on primetime action, Matt would always kind of do it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Stop me if I'm wrong here. But I always look at this is how I have these teams ranked projecting forward, right? So this is sometimes there are some, like Seahawks right now, right? There's a ton of injuries on that team. Would they be in my top 10 today? No. Are they probably in my top dozen at least, though, for going forward? Absolutely, because that team is still quality team, but they're stacked up with injuries. Just like if you wanted to tell me the Packers are in your top 10 right now, fine. I'm not going to really argue with you on that because we really haven't seen the full potential of what that team could be yet. So I think it's important to lay out. I think before we get to mine, I think the bigger question actually is their top 8. Because me and you have the same 8 teams.
I'm looking at yours for the first time. We got the same top 8.
Yeah, and we can go to them now, but
not precisely, but the same 8 at the top.
The same 8 teams are at the top.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess the question marks there are Browns and Ravens, but I don't really know it's those 2 teams.
The issue is there is nobody obvious to replace them at 7 or 8. Like that, I think we used to say, like the league last year, even we were like, oh, after 9 it falls off a cliff.
Right.
And then after 13 it really falls into the abyss. I think it's almost sooner now, right? I think it's creeping up to 8 because who else can you justify besides Browns and Ravens at this point? We're like, oh, they're absolutely 7 or 8. Nobody. There's no other team.
I don't think so, at least. I mean, I guess, I'll bring up teams like the Packers again, where if, we keep hearing these people that are so high on the damn Falcons, you know what I mean?
Stop it.
Maybe.
No.
But, I'm with you. To me, there's 8, and then there's a pretty big drop-off after that 8th team. I didn't even really know what to do with 9, 10 for me. So, top 5 remain the same. I just did a lot of shuffling this week with my top 5. I mean, Cowboys lose. They were my number 1 team last week. Look, I think there's still a big separation between those top 5 teams and everybody else behind them. I expect Cowboys bounce back this week. I think there's a big there's somewhere in between, Gill, from what we saw that team look like last week and what we saw them look like week 1. They're not as good as a 40-0 win over the Giants. They're not as bad as what they looked like last week. I think you're going to see this team get it together, but they fall down to 5th for me. I had to move up the Dolphins, so Eagles had to drop down a spot.
Yep.
I think that was the most interesting thing to me this week when doing this was where do you put the Dolphins? Because they are exciting as hell, but how much do you really trust them long term, right? And I think I've
had them in the top 5 the whole way.
No, we have. I think I've been there right there with you. Maybe week 1 they were 6, 7, 8 for me. I don't really remember. But right now they've got to be in that range until you see something bad out of them.
So it occurs to me to sort of stop and say this, which is, okay, some people are going to be listening and say, okay, why do you guys even do this? Like, who cares what your power rankings are? It's a First of all, you don't have to be that rude about it when you ask this. Just a hypothetical conversation in my head. Hey, why are you so rude about it? The question becomes, and it's a valid one, how close do you actually adhere to your power rankings when handicapping games on a week-to-week basis? And I think it's a great question because, for me, I can't answer it that consistently. In other words, so Miami's at Buffalo this week.
Yeah, and if I was going to bet that game, the only side I'd be betting is Miami.
You would only be betting Miami?
Yes.
Okay.
I am not considering a Bills bet whatsoever.
For me, the way that the power rankings helps me is that it allows me, how can I put this? It prevents me from overreacting to recency bias.
Yes.
So
completely agree.
If the Cowboys lose a game as miserably as they do to the Arizona Cardinals, which, let me just say it again, the Cardinals, who very well could be 3-0, they didn't win that game helped by turnovers. They just popped them in the mouth.
Yeah,
they just beat them. But I'm not going to, like in my head, you could very easily as a football viewer be like, the Cowboys are terrible. I had them all wrong. No, I just dropped them to 5, right? So as a framework, that just sort of helps keep you honest.
Yes.
That's the way it helps me.
Yep.
I don't know that if, like, who did I have as my 8 and my 9? Like, if the Ravens at 8.
You had Ravens 8, Seahawks 9, Chargers
Seahawks 9. If the Ravens are hosting the Seahawks, does that mean I make them precisely a 4-point favorite because they're not only 3 points of home, but they're 1 point better in power rankings? I don't use them in that way. Some people do.
Yeah. I think it also depends on, a lot of other NFL betting things, right? Situation, spot, all that kind of stuff, I think does come into play. Yeah. Look, the Browns... Just to hit on the Browns again, I mean, I think that is the team, much like people said about the Niners last year, where it's, I don't really care what's going on the offensive side of the ball. I don't care who's playing quarterback and what the play looks like. This defense is so damn good. I think that they are going to stay a good team for the entirety of the season as long as they maintain health on that side of the ball. And I think Ravens 8, they're 8 for both of us, I believe. Yeah, 8 for both of us. I would say they're the team that's down there.
Teetering the most?
Teetering the most to either go down or up. Like, this team has been banged up all year. I think they could end up looking a whole lot better in a couple weeks. I wouldn't be shocked if they slide in my top 5 somehow. I also wouldn't be shocked if they slide out of the top 10.
There's also there's a bit of organizational confirmation bias with the Ravens. Like, we know them to be a solid organization, and they always seem to figure it out, and Harbaugh always puts out a good team. So a little bit of that seeps into our thought, too, right?
And I also don't think we've seen what this Ravens offense was designed to be this year because of the injuries. I forgot we brought it up earlier this week, but it's very true. The new offense are supposed to be developing. The injuries have held them back from really being able to run that fully, I think.
Yeah. It's an interesting exercise. Everybody should do it. Mathematically for some, not quite as mathematically for others, but it can only help you when handicapping NFL from week to week.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.